Welcome back to our nostalgic journey back to the little country schoolhouse. Back in the good old days, some kids walked to school, but those who had to go long distances sometimes rode. Don Bell remembers those days. He also remembers wearing knickers so tight they could have been used for tourniquets, along with high black stockings. When those stockings got holes in them, Don remembers dabbing his leg black with shoe polish to get by without mending them. That was back in the early part of the 20th century at Prairie Home School near Silver Lake, Kansas. Join me as we hear Don's story in Prairie School Kids.
Yep, I did go to school, and a country school to boot. I even carried a slate my first few years. The school I'm referring to was called Prairie Home, a one-room school taught by one teacher, Miss Celia Lohr, near the town of Silver Lake, Kansas. Actually, it was about 20 miles from Silver Lake, but that was near in those days. I'm sure that my brother and I gave Miss Lohr her share of headaches. We were 3 miles from the school. I rode a little sorrel mare. The schoolhouse had a large porch on it, and one time I rode my horse up on the porch, broke through the floor and skinned my mare's legs all up, tore up the old rotten floorboards, and got expelled from school, too. My hobbies were riding my horse at a gallop during rainy weather and splashing muddy water on the girls. Our teacher wore high-button shoes and ankle-length dresses, and she played games with us at recess. In those days, kids dressed much differently than they do today. We boys wore caps that had a sunbill with a stiff cardboard lining. The cardboard always broke, and we sure did look something funny. For dress, small boys wore knee pants called knickerbockers, black cotton-ribbed stockings, and shoes of the cheapest make. We would have a hole in our stockings, and to keep from patching it, we would dab our leg where it showed with black shoe polish. During recess, the boys' outside toilet was our place to hide and smoke. The girls' toilet was straight across from ours, and there were many flirtations between waves and throwing kisses to the girls. We all had girlfriends, but we didn't date or go with them. It was all just imagination. Although we did pass "I love you" notes back and forth. Then we were afraid to look up to see what the reaction was. The last day of the school term was our big celebration, and we all looked forward to that. All the parents would bring good food, homemade ice cream, and every kind of pie and cake there was. Usually I'd end up sick from overeating. Miss Lohr was a very young girl. Her wages were $50 a month. She boarded with a family who had kids in school. Seeing what a hellion I was, she offered me the job as janitor. My wages were $3 per month. I came to school early and get the fire going in the big stove. We burned Osage coal from a nearby mine. It was $5 per ton then. I stayed after all the other kids went home and sweep all the floors. Miss Lohr sat at her desk, grading papers, and I swept so hard that dust fogged the room. She would cough and tell me to sprinkle the floor first, which I never did. Several of us kids rode horseback to school. We didn't have a shed or barn to shelter our horses, and during cold winters those horses suffered through the cold many a day. Looking back, we can all see many mistakes we made. During school, the teacher would have each class come to the front by her desk. Our school had 1st through 8th grades, usually with 2 or 3 pupils to a grade. We never knew about lockers. All we had was a hallway with walls driven full of spikes. There, we hung our coats, and our overshoes were all over the floor. If the teacher had to give one of us a licking, she would take us out in that hallway. I'm sure that was to have privacy so the other kids couldn't see us get tanned, but most of the kids would turn and watch anyway. I got several of those lickings, but I would never cry. I'd try to laugh for the benefit of the other kids, although it stung. All kids were from poor families, and we looked the part. We had homemade shirts with collars that looked like one on a woman's dress, large and 2-hole bone buttons sewed on with black thread. Getting our knee pants buttoned at the knee was a job because they were so tight. Cotton stockings and long handle underwear underneath made for lumpy-looking legs. Then we fought the button on the knee of those pants and ended up using a button hook. Our garters were rubber mason fruit jar rings. They always shut off the circulation. What circulation we had after jar rubber, the button on those knee pants got. During the hot weather, the girls wore homemade bonnets to keep the sun off. All girls were afraid the sun made freckles. Christmas was a big event at school. Always we had a program, a Christmas tree and presents, all made at home. Valentine's Day was the same. We drew names, then got colored paper or old wallpaper and cut out the heart. That was our Valentine. We didn't see a store-bought Valentine until many years later. I had the reddest hair of any kids and lots of freckles, too. If a boy wanted to fight me, all he had to do was remind me of my red hair and freckles. We had finger signals for the teacher. 2 fingers meant we had to go out to the outhouse. 1 finger meant we had to step in back of the schoolhouse. Looking back, all I remember of learning in school was to read and write. My mind wasn't on education, and how I got through that 8th grade I'll never know. It was all the schooling I ever got. Most of what I learned was from my own school of hard knocks, and it's been the hard way. Kids in these modern days just don't realize what a school like Prairie Home was. After they finished the 8th grade, most country boys worked on a farm or ranch. Very few went on to high school. The girls most always married their school-day sweetie, moved in with one of their parents, and helped out on the farm. They all raised a lot of kids. When you graduated from 8th grade at Prairie Home School, you were proud.
Henry Chequer was one of those kids teachers might like to forget. You remember the kind, the ones who spent 2 years in kindergarten, the ones who insisted on coloring all their pictures magenta, even if the picture was of bananas. The ones who got the most raps on the hand and the most swats on the backside. Henry, or Harry as he was dubbed by one of his teachers, thinks there is a special place reserved in heaven for schoolmarms. He remembers some of those special ladies in No Bounding Shore.
Do you remember, my sister wrote me? Do you remember attending Cummings School? The Boston papers report it was destroyed by fire. Arson is suspected. My first thought of who might be responsible was of a fellow student who vented his pent-up emotions by running through the hall shouting, "Don't sell the old homestead, Mother! Burn the darn place down!" Nah, couldn't have been him. He's in Michigan. It was a small gray building with a handful of classrooms for the primary classes. In our town, the educational system then was divided into 3 groups: primary school for the first 3 grades, grammar school for grades 4 to 8, and high school with 4 grades. But first, there was kindergarten. And so at the tender age of 3, with a full face, rounded tummy, sturdy legs, and looking somewhat like a diminutive Winston Churchill, I walked across town to kindergarten at Baxter School. There, 2 wonderful young ladies kept us occupied coloring with crayons and watercolors pictures of all kinds of animals. They had us pasting colored paper cutouts onto other colored papers, which didn't make any sense, but which we signed in big scrawl letters and hung on the wall for all to admire. In the winter months, we cut and folded paper, which, when opened, looked like snowflakes, and which the teacher pasted on the windows. At the end of the year, we had a party with milk and cookies, and we were awarded our diplomas. This is to certify that Henry Chequer, Jr. has successfully completed the course prescribed in the Baxter Kindergarten, cum laude. Eleanor A. Connor, Mary T. McCarthy, teachers, June 25, 1909. The following September, with diploma in grubby little fist, I walked to nearby Cummings Primary School for admission. But because I was 4 years old, it was decided I was too young for first grade. So back to kindergarten I went for another year of forming lopsided creatures with dull scissors, coloring pictures of dogs, cats, and other livestock with crayons and watercolors, and making snowflakes to paste on the windows. For some reason, in my postgraduate kindergarten year, I developed a passion for the colors old rose and magenta. When representations of various fruits and vegetables were displayed on the wall, those colored old rose or magenta, including the bananas, were mine. At the tender age of 5, I again sought admission to Cummings School, but the Board of Education had now established a minimum age of 6 for admissions to primary school because, I was told, the schools were crowded. I had about worn out my welcome in kindergarten, and no doubt the teachers had gotten tired of bananas colored old rose, so I spent one of the happiest years of my young life roaming the streets and byways of the town. In the fall of 1911, I finally was accepted into primary school. I can remember our first reader, the colored pictures, and each page containing 2 simple sentences. I see the cat sees me. I see the dog sees me. Our teacher, Miss Hadley, wore a long, flowing black dress with white lace collar and cuffs. Smelling of lavender, she patiently guided us through our simple lessons, never angry or perturbed over our errors or lapses of discipline. She would play the piano and we would gather around and sing simple songs. There were never enough songbooks to go around, and as several had to sing from the same book, there were clusters of faces, not unlike the groups of cherubs sometimes seen on country tombstones. And so we entered upon a road that someone had prepared before us, of discipline, obedience, and gentleness. Then on to the second grade, taught by Miss Kahn. When she had reached about 5 feet in height, the rest of her growth spread sideways. She didn't glide across the room as Miss Hadley did. She flounced, and the wooden floor bounced with her weight. Every little incident, the inadvertent banging of a desktop, the scuffling of feet under a desk, a whispered communication to a nearby friend, excited her anger and caused her to use her rattan stick. I soon learned to drop my outstretched hand at the moment of impact to lessen the pain, but Miss Kahn caught on and substituted grabbing the back of my shirt and shaking. Frequently I went home with few or no buttons. I don't think I learned much that year, except to sew buttons on my shirt. The trolley ran along the top of the hill. Every day after school, Miss Kahn negotiated the hill, huffing and puffing, despite the efforts of the girls from the class who helped as best they could by pushing her from behind. Miss Kahn had a lot to push. Third grade was taught by Miss Quinn, who was also the primary school principal. Her class was quiet and orderly. After all, she was the principal, and we had been taught to respect authority. I spent only the first half year in her class and was promoted to the 4th grade in grammar school. What a delight! Mrs. McDonald was the teacher. At the first roll call, she called me Harry, and Harry it remained. Again, after the first half year, I was promoted to the 5th grade. Then on to the 6th grade, taught, or should I say ruled, by Miss Birch. Compared to her, Miss Kahn was an angel. Her anger was unpredictable, but instead of receiving the rattan stick, the miscreants were sent to the principal's office. Our grammar school principal was bow-legged, and I affectionately nicknamed him Bandy. He was a kindly and gentle person. After I had reported to his office a few times, he would greet me with, "You here again?" and he would hand me a book to read for the remaining period. As my visits continued, his greeting was shortened to, "Here again?" Later on, he would sigh and say, "Again." As the months passed, no spoken greeting was necessary. When I entered his office, he barely looked up and handed me a book. Miss Birch departed at the close of the school year, and the teachers were reassigned, so that in my 9th grade I again had Mrs. McDonald for my teacher, the alpha and omega of my grammar school years. Upon graduation, I would be 13 years old and looking forward to high school and college. I was already playing in the high school orchestra in preparation for becoming a student there. But my folks were moving to another state, which fortunately had the junior high system, so I would have only 3 years of high school. I was asked to sing at the graduation exercises. "Please," Mrs. McDonald said, "don't sing the end of a perfect day." So I sang "They're Hanging Danny Deever in the Morning." The applause was so enthusiastic that I went away wondering whether I had been mistaken for Danny Deever. "Come back again, and come back soon," they told me. I never went back, but in the years that followed, my heart replied, "I have never left you." So many years have passed. In time, I came to comprehend the dedication of most of my teachers, the hopes and dreams for their students, the restless striving to be worthy of their calling, and the constant anguish of patient endurance. Despite indifference all around them, they set a steady course with no compass but their unsatisfied longing, like a ship in the wide ocean with no bounding shore.
Jimmy Durante was one of my favorite comedians and actors. His style could never be copied. He was truly one of a kind. But did you know he was a patron of the arts? At least that's what he claims to be in this song from radio back in the 1940s.
Seeking my favorite diversion last night and feeling in the pink, I stepped to my plush upholstered bench. Put my 2 footmen commanding the poop deck and my Arabian steeds going at a gentle trot, we approached the theater marquee And what happens? The red carpet is rolled out. My 2 footmen descend from the poop deck. They open the door and I steps out. Looking up from the gutter, I said, "Who told you to remove the running board?" Picking myself up and ignoring the stares of the hoipaloo, I makes my entrance gallantly into the Diamond Horseshoe, removing my top hat, my nylon gloves, my skunk muffler, and my pet leather goulashes with the neon buttons. I looks around. Mrs. Van Scaler is whispering to Mrs. Murray Hill. Mrs. Murray Hill is whispering to Mrs. Susquehanna, and what are they saying? Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Is it Superman? No, they shouted it's a bum. You see, a vicious rumor has been circulated just because I work in a saloon. They say I'm not fit to mingle in any other circle. That's ridiculous. Nightclubs are just the Mr. Hyde part of me. You have yet to meet the Dr. Jekyll. I'm Durante, the patron of the arts, an opera critic, and a man of parts. Last week I went to the opera. I loved it. All but one scene. That's where the 350-pound soprano sings to the baritone. She sings, "Take me in your arms and hold me close." Why, to hold her close, the bum would have to be curved like a banana. Those opera lovers all rave at Handel's Largo. I heard better music written by Umbria. Now, what I say may sound absurd, but believe me, it's true. I've seen every opera, and I'll name them for you. Tales of the Vienna Rolls, Madame Buttermilk, the Sextet from Lychee Nuts, and the Quartet from Rigor Mortis. I coach sopranos and tenors in their parts, cause I'm Durante, the patron of the arts. Now, just the other day, they held a meeting at the Metropolitan, in the cellar. They said, "Durante, we're in a hole. You gotta help us out." Stepping up on a soapbox, left over from Rigoletto, I said, "Gentlemen, let's analyze this. Now take Romeo and Juliet. Romeo has to leave Juliet. But does he say, 'Shoo-shoo, baby'? No. In opera he says, 'I have but a moment to spend with you. A moment, my dear, to spend with you. A moment I spend, a moment to spend. A moment, 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 a moment.' He's got 1 moment to spend and he's taken 3 hours to tell her about it. Why, that bum is making a federal case out of it. Then she says, 'I will give you a kiss, my love. A burning kiss upon the lips. A burning kiss, a kiss, a kiss upon the lips. A burning kiss, a kiss, a kiss, a kiss, a kiss upon the lips. A burning kiss.' By the time he's ready to kiss her, the fire is out. So I said, "Gentlemen, to save the opera, get yourself new lyrics that have style and renown. Like Pistol Packin' Mama, lay that pistol down." They all gave thanks from the bottom of their hearts to Durante, the patron of the arts, a connoisseur, Durante, the patron of the arts.
Darrell Gwaltney and his mother moved to his grandparents' farm while his father served in World War II. It was there that Darrell first entered the hallowed halls of learning, a small country school in Jefferson County, Missouri. Here is Darrell's story of My First School. I'll never forget the first school I attended. My parents lived in St. Louis and times were difficult. When my brother Gary was born in January 1944, my dad was in the Marine Corps fighting in the Pacific. My mother moved us to my grandparents' farm in Jefferson County in the fall of 1945. Life was easier there. It was a new way of life for all of us, though. Grandma and Grandpa didn't have electricity, gas heat, or running water. The nearest telephone was 5 miles away. The only road was a sea of mud when it rained, and the low-water bridge was washed out half the time. I started my first year of school in September. The school was a one-room frame building and had 24 pupils. The teacher was Mrs. Johnson. To reach school, we had to take the Ware Road, now known as Highway Y, to the school driveway beside the Baptist church. The school road went over a hill, down into a deep valley, and up another steep hill to the school. Many times in bad weather, the hills became impassable. It seemed like we spent more time pushing the teacher's Jeep up those hills than we did attending school. Then there was the route all of us east of the school chose. We detoured down the driveway that led to the baker's home, cut across their field, took a shortcut by the gap, and crossed an open pasture that came out beside the woodshed at the school. The only problem with this arrangement was that the gate was left open many times, and it seemed Mr. Baker spent a lot of time rounding up his cattle. Of course, no one ever remembered leaving the gate open. Each school day was memorable. That winter it was too cold to study at our desks, so we would gather around the large wood stove in the corner. Each class had its turn, and the morning passed quickly. Near the wall stood a small table holding a bucket of water, pumped fresh from the well each morning. Near this were a washpan and a dish containing a bar of soap that usually lasted a long time from lack of use. This was where we prepared for lunch. My lunch was always the same: 2 fried egg sandwiches covered with plenty of ketchup and a large orange. This was a lunch fit for a king, I thought. My grandma packed my lunch in an empty lard bucket with a handle. After lunch, we'd gather by the woodshed and play Red Rover and tag. Some got an occasional switching for climbing the nearby persimmon trees. I'm speaking from experience there. School children in those days didn't know what playground equipment was. The walk back home in the evening was just as eventful. One boy persisted in picking fights with me at every opportunity. I still don't know why. I usually tried going home a different way, or leaving earlier or later, or sometimes I just took my chances. The latter decision seemed to be my choice most of the time, and, you guessed it, I got another licking. School demanded warmer clothing. We wore long cotton socks that reached above the knees and were held up with garters. The only trouble was that the garters didn't hold them up. When we reached home, the socks were almost always down over our shoes and trailing along behind. We all wore long john underwear with long sleeves, long legs, and a flap in the back for convenience. Then there were the mittens, sewn to the ends of a string that went up one sleeve, across the back, and down the other sleeve. We very rarely lost our mittens with this system. My dad soon returned home from the service, and we moved back to the city, where I attended a modern city school. But I'll never forget attending my first school in Lukey, Missouri, in the fall of 1945. We heard earlier about the horse-drawn kid hack, the early version of a school bus. Well, Lillian Wyles had a harrowing experience on one back in the winter of 1923 when she was just 8 years old. Perhaps today's crowded streets are pretty dangerous for school transportation, but Lillian will tell you that the roads could still be treacherous back in the good old days when she had a narrow escape.
Something that happened during the winter of 1923 in Upper Michigan scared me so badly I won't forget it. I was 8 years old. I waited at our gate by the road like I did every school day. It wasn't long before I saw the canvas-roofed school bus. The driver yelled, "Whoa!" to his horses and stopped beside me. I climbed in through the rear door and sat on one of the long wooden benches that ran from front to back on the side toward the road. I put my lunch on my lap. It was packed in a lard pail, identical to those most of the kids carried. Our bus was a far cry from the modern ones. It resembled a covered wagon, except the ends were closed with boards. Both the front and back had a door, but only the front had a window. The horses' reins passed through a slot cut in the front so the driver could sit inside. In the spring and fall, when the roads permitted, our bus had wheels, but now, with snow on the ground, the wagon bed had been put onto sleigh runners. My stop was the last, so the bus was already full. It was bitterly cold, and there was no heater, so we kids crowded together to keep warm. The team started toward town. Our driver soon saw that a driving north wind had piled high drifts on the curve ahead. He decided to take a shortcut and turned onto the sawmill road. We looked at each other. The loudest sound was our breathing. This route was strictly forbidden, but no kid would dare question the driver. That would be disrespectful. At this time of year, the loggers, including my dad, were hauling in logs to saw into boards at the mill. The sawmill road was never in good shape. Today it was even worse because of the snow and all the traffic on it. But in a few minutes our bus was going downhill toward the point where the road narrowed to one lane. Huge log decks were close to the road on both sides, waiting to be cut. We got to the bottom of the hill and felt the bus slide. We knew we were stuck when the driver said, "All of you big kids, get out and help." Before anyone could move, the kids started screaming. I guess someone had peeked out between the boards on the back. They saw my dad at the top of the hill with a huge log load. Dad saw our bus below, but he couldn't hold back our high-spirited team. Down the hill they came. Dad yanked hard on the reins to turn the team off the road, up onto the log decks. It was all he could do. We heard canvas rip, and the wooden ribs which held the canvas up snapped like trees in a strong wind. When everything stopped moving, I looked up. There was almost no roof on my side of the bus. My back was leaning against the side of one of Dad's horses. Miraculously, none of the people or horses was hurt, so when they got our bus unstuck, we continued to school. The worst part was that my lunch pail was gone. But the other kids shared their lunch with me, so I didn't go hungry. On the way home, I got my lunch back. Someone had found it where we crashed and gave it to our driver. I don't know what was said or done about the bus being on the sawmill road. All I know is we never traveled that treacherous route again.
That was the Billy Mills Orchestra from the Fibber McGee and Molly show back in 1949, playing How Soon?